Hello, I'm back. I'm here to hopefully finish off the section on disciplines in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. Um, and yeah, move on from there. Beyond, the Black Hand playing Sabbat and all that, I'll be at Gen Con this year. I don't know if I've announced that, but I'll be at Gen Con this year as part of the Writers Symposium. I'll be doing some panels there. I don't remember off the top of my head all the panels I'm on. I think I'm on only a handful of panels this year. I think last year I was on like 13 panels, and that was a bit extreme. So they were kind to me this year, and only gave me a few. So I think I'm on 3 or 4 panels this year, mostly having to do with character development, that kind of thing. And I think I think there one panel is called like "There's a Monster in My Bed," which is I'm sure we can have a lot of fun with that with that kind of framing. So we'll see how that goes. Um, yeah, other than that, not much else going on. I'm just doing a lot of writing, kind of heads down on some writing. Been busy, so I haven't really been able to stream as much as I had hoped to the past week, but that's okay. That's okay. Writing, should come first, and I personally don't like to, write on stream. It's just a thing. I think some people do. They like create and like draw on stream, and I guess it's not really something I want to do. I don't think I would really be very talkative while I write. I don't tend to talk and chat with other people while I'm writing, so pretty boring stream to watch me like type and do all that kind of crap. Um, but yeah, I think we finished off the addendum that was added to the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, specifically on the Lasombra last time. Um, that's where we left off. Um, and we talked basically about obtenebration as like a separate amalgam kind of discipline, as opposed to the use of oblivion. Though you don't necessarily have to replace one with the other. Um, that Crowned in Shadow supplement, which is on the Storyteller's Vault, and is also now part of the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. That is actually pay what you want or free, basically. And it also has a lore sheet in it, not just disciplines, not just kind of a revamping of La Sombra mechanically, but also flavor-wise. And we have a lore sheet here, which I'm personally a big fan of, called the Descendant of Marconius. Hey there, Gord. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. Always streams are always better when I have some company, so I appreciate it. And though this is outside the realm of disciplines per se, maybe I'll do a separate stream, basically going over the lore sheets that are in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, and and see how that goes. I think this particular lore sheet is a lot of fun because it basically touches on some kind of OG lore having to do with the Chaosid, a very rare but I think well-loved bloodline of the La Sombra, that have always been kind of in touch with the Fey lore in the World of Darkness. This is kind of I wouldn't say a full reimagining of them, but I feel it lets you get a little flavor of that Chaosid with this lore sheet, and it had some interesting things in it. I won't go over it because that's kind of above the purview. Oh, did the new Bloodlines 2 DLC come out? All right, that's great. That's the loose cannon, I believe, that has to do with like the sheriff and all that. So again, that's pretty cool. I haven't really picked that up yet. I probably will wait till it's on sale or something. I actually like Bloodlines 2. I don't know. A lot of people like it. Just see as soon as it came out, like it seemed like there was a kind of a cottage industry and people hating on it. So I actually don't mind it. Yeah, it's kind of funny that there's so much Sabbat in Bloodlines 2. There's like arguably more Sabbat in Bloodlines 2 than in Bloodlines 1. Like you really don't get unless you play the kind of expanded Bloodlines 1 stuff. But in Bloodlines 1, the story, the Sabbat are really just kind of like throwaway villains that you don't really get a lot of insight into them other than they're kind of pawns to be mowed through, like real like cutouts. Which, to be fair, I guess, Bloodlines 1 kind of came out during, I guess, the height of the Justin Achille era of Vampire the Masquerade, which, of course, was, the Sabbat were not, in my opinion, very well represented in the game there. So that's fair. But I think BL2 actually has really interesting Sabbat characters. There's a really great Sabbat villain in the base Bloodlines 2 game who is fun and interesting and is actually one of the few boss fights that has a kind of pretty interesting wrinkle to it beyond basically the beat them 3 times. And the Sabbat, and I won't spoil the game, but the Sabbat are a big part of Bloodlines 2 and the best part about the whole game. So I liked Bloodlines 2. I thought it was fun. It definitely has nothing to do with Bloodlines 1. It's a completely different kind of game. It is really kind of an action RPG or like I wouldn't really I barely call it an RPG, but it's kind of more of an action RPG than anything else. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with Bloodlines 2. Maybe not a $60 or $50 game. I don't know if I would even call it a AAA game, but I would definitely recommend people buy it if it's on sale. I think it's a lot of fun. I had a great time playing it. I don't know what else to say. Hopefully the DLCs will be good too. And as far as like the lore and the immersiveness in the vampire world, I thought it did a pretty good job with that. Like the voice acting is good, all that. I'd say the worst parts of the game for me for Bloodlines 2 was the kind of fan service stuff. that was wedged in there that really didn't do much. Like there's a character from Bloodlines 1 that makes an appearance in Bloodlines 2 that's totally superfluous. No reason for them to be there at all. Kind of is like a basically just a total red herring, actually, which is a shame because the character themselves is kind of interesting and a fan favorite. And there's really nothing else like that in the game that links it to Bloodlines 1 like at all. But I think there's some really great stuff in there. I really like the kind of Malkavian investigator archetype is just such a classic archetype that I have written in and played with myself, and I think they do a great job there. I think the fire character, obviously, kind of boring and not that interesting, but that's fine. They're really just kind of a blank slate for you to put some character into. So they have a little more flavor than I would say the base character in Bloodlines 1. I would say the main complaint I have is that the play of the game doesn't really change. Even if you want a different kind of playthrough, there's not a lot of ways to play it different. Like, unlike Bloodlines 1, where you could really do immersive play, like as the Nosferatu or the Malkavian or the Ventrue, where you could like talk your way through almost any situation, or sneak your way through almost any situation. Like, I would say 7 times out of 10, until the later part of Bloodlines 1, where the game kind of falls apart. In Bloodlines 2, the gameplay loop is really going to be the same, no matter what clan or style you want to play. There really isn't a different way to play the game other than, beating the crap out of people. And that's okay. It's not, like, great for immersive RPG, but that's okay. But that's enough about Bloodlines 2. I actually think it was fun. I had a great time with it. I didn't get it for free either, so I paid my own money for Bloodlines 2. I think I paid full price. So I think that's my only complaint, is that I think it was a little pricier than, what it was worth, but I had a good time. It was a lot of fun. I don't really have a lot of regrets. My recommendation for other people is maybe wait for it to be on sale, and you probably won't have any regrets for the game. So because I have limited time today, unfortunately, I'm gonna hop in. So, just like we rolled Crowned in Shadow into the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, and as I hope to roll Insatiable Dreams, the Ravnos supplement, into the Black Hand playing the Sabbat as well, we rolled in the New Flesh, which is kind of the Zemese reimagining. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but basically we reformulated the Zemese Bane, reformulated their compulsion a bit. So they're a little different than the base rules. I think it works okay. I don't think, these are any better or that much better than the baseline. I kind of prefer the covetousness as a compulsion as opposed to the baseline of their Bane. And we made the Bane more about something that they are connected to, whether that's like a physical location or a group of people or whatnot, and that they have to sleep surrounded by this thing they have a connection to, whether that's like the soil of their grave or a specific building or a mixed, a counterculture or like a nightclub or a kind of music collection, maybe even. It's really up to you, but it's not really like about Chotskis or like Pokemon cards or anything like that. It's really about something that has a deeper meaning to your character on some level, whether spiritually, psychologically, or maybe on like a more mystical level, that you must kind of sleep surrounded by the trappings of that kind of thing. And so a character who travels has to kind of keep that in mind, and hopefully they can, like, I don't know, maybe they bring a model set of their building, who knows, or like a flag or a doorknob from it, something like that. that would allow for them to move around. But to be fair, in V5, travel is kind of rarer in general. Um, Travel because of the Second Inquisition and just the nature of the game being a kind of more street level game. Very rarely is a group of players going to have the resources, connections necessary to travel safely and easily. Though the Sabbat obviously have other ways to get around. They have kind of they're kind of the more nomadic version of vampires in general. But still, I think it's a pretty interesting take on the Bane and the covetousness, the like hoarding aspect of it is more of their compulsion than their Bane. Kept the discipline spread the same because I'm not a huge fan of this discipline spread. Animalism, Dominate, Protean. I actually think Dominate is not a great match for Zemese, just like stylistically, vibe wise. But I'm not really a fan either of totally rehauling everything either. That's really not what this is about. This was just for more players to have options without completely re-engineering things for each clan or whatnot. I did the same with the Ravnos. I'm not a huge fan of their current discipline spread. I believe that's Presence, Obfuscate, Animalism. Not a huge fan of that discipline spread. It's kind of a unique discipline spread, which is kind of fun. But personally, I think there's probably a better spread that would have been more interesting for them, but it's okay. Here, Vicissitude, yet again, it's kind of a kicker. It's an amalgam subgroup that gives a kicker to the powers. In this case, Vicissitude, once per scene after failing the rouse check for this power, you can activate your clan or path compulsion instead of gaining hunger. So that's kind of gives you, yet again, it kind of gives you more uses of the power on some set. And more importantly, it brings the compulsions more into play. Like, I feel compulsions in general very rarely come into play through rolls. So having more ways for players to kind of trigger the compulsion, or for storytellers to trigger compulsions in an interesting way. I always prefer players to have the thumbs up, thumbs down, whether a compulsion comes in. So I felt this was a fun way to bring the compulsion in. Basically, you choose to use the power for free in a sense. On the failed rouse check, you can basically like, okay, hit me with the, I'm gonna role play my compulsion instead of taking the hunger. Yeah, I mean, I didn't love the original discipline set of Ravnos personally. What was it? Animalism, Fortitude, Chemistry, I believe. I didn't really love that because basically it was Gangrel, but you threw Protean away for Chemistry. I didn't think that was great. I prefer discipline sets that are pretty unique. Like just look at Ventrue. Basically, there's no other clan that gets both Dominate and Presence in their discipline set. They're like unique in that way, and it says a lot about them. And even the fact that Fortitude rounds it out, it gives you like a kind of interesting conceptual idea of them, of their vibe. I don't know if I would have gone Animalism, Fortitude, Obfuscate, but yet again, it could have been interesting, right? I think a lot of people assumed Obfuscate, Fortitude would have been the way Chemistry would have been handled as an amalgam. I really think they were basically given Presence simply because Obfuscate Presence was seen as the way to do Chemistry. And I think that's the same with Zemese. Basically, they were given Dominate because Dominate Protean was seen as the best way to do Vicissitude. I don't really think that's the way to do it. I think you can really kind of gin up any excuse you want for why an amalgam works. For Ravnos, I kind of like Animalism on some level. Maybe Dominate would have been more interesting than Presence, but then again, of course, too many clans have Dominate, so it is what it is. I don't really know what I would have done differently for Ravnos, so it's not really something I tinkered or messed with. I'd say about 20% of the disciplines in this back are in this back half of the book are the same as the Protean, Zemisay, Vicissitude disciplines in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. I think we have 3 powers in there, and so there three of the powers listed here are from there. They're not really changed, except that they have the Vicissitude Kicker listed in them. I think I did go back and put the Vicissitude Kicker in there too, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But basically, we've got Trophy Hunter, which is the same. Basically, steal someone's face. Flens, yet again, damage someone with Vicissitude. And Whispers to the Flesh down here. Everything else is new, and these are mostly the kind of reimagining of the companion vicissitude powers, which were, in my opinion, kind of these like nested dolls of prerequisites and power levels that basically asked you to spend a lot of discipline dots for not a lot of payoff. Like to be able to do like the whole flesh crafting master surgeon Zemisay thing, which is for most of the time a very off-screen endeavor. You were basically being asked to blow, 3 to 4 discipline dots to really get that to happen. And I don't really feel that was the best way to go about it. So I really wanted to simplify that. So very much the like flesh crafting here, which is just called Fleshcraft. The Horrid Form here, and then of course Blood Shape, are basically meant to replace those powers found in the companion. And I'll talk about Fleshcraft in detail here. How high up do those decisions go? Was it something writers, developers came up with on the player's guide, or does Kareem have a big design document where this stuff is decided ahead of time? Ha ha ha. No, I don't think it's not really decided ahead of time. I'm not giving away any trade secrets or anything. But for the companion, that was done in-house. And so the companion really decided what disciplines these clans would get, the Ravnos, the Zemisay, the Salubri, and what how their amalgams would be shaped. So it was really the companion that decided that. And that companion was basically brought in, and I can say with some confidence, without giving away any inside knowledge at all, that was really really from the mind of Justin. I know Kareem and Justin basically were the main developers on that, but from working with Kareem in the past on the unpublished Vampires Player's Guide, I can say that those were not the formulations of disciplines that we were thinking of using in the unpublished Vampires Player's Guide for either Shimistray or Vicissitude. And definitely not for Obeya either. So I can say that. So I can kind of surmise that what we got in the companion was probably very heavily weighted in the favor of what Justin and Killy wanted to do with those clans as opposed to anything else. And that companion was, brought in-house, and the Sabbat book was brought in-house, and then the VPG, which I worked on, the official VPG that was eventually published by Renegade, the unpublished one basically kind of was shelved as Modiphius, stopped being the publisher and Renegade became the publisher. And obviously Renegade wasn't going to publish like an unfinished, quote unquote, an unfinished book from a different developer. And the VPG kind of was in limbo for quite a while for various reasons. Some of them good, some of them bad. But eventually the argument that, I think what really won the argument for the Vampires Player's Guide to eventually be published, the official one, was the concept that you needed 6 or 7 books to have all the clans available for play. I think that argument eventually won the day. And that's why the Vampire Player's Guide exists as it exists, because it really was the driving focus of that book from day one, that with the core book and the Vampires Player's Guide, you had all the options available for play. that we weren't going to have this kind of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons system where there's just constant flow of new clans, or in all these desperate books. So that's really what I think sold the VPG and why it was eventually done, was so that you with just 2 books. Actually, to be honest, you really only need the Vampires Player's Guide. You actually don't need the core book at all to play Vampire, which is, I think works fine as long as you know like the basic rules. But obviously, to really have the complete set, you need that. You need the core book. Well, I mean, I guess I have the benefit of kind of knowing the core book pretty well. So that's fair. That's fair. But I would say, as a player, you only need the player's guide. As long as your ST has the core rulebook, then you're set. I would say it really encourages the ST to, you really only need one core rulebook at the table. And if all the players have a player's guide, then, you're kind of set, is what I'd say. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I was being hyperbolic. But really, with those 2 books, you have the whole game. You don't really need, a million other books. And especially since some of the, like, there's a city, like, you needing a city book to have La Sombra was always really strange. Needing the whole Camarilla book just to have Assamites. Needing the whole Anarch book just to have, the Ministry. That was just not, that was a bit much. And those weren't cheap books. And so altogether, I think those 6 books, you were talking, you were coming up to close to, to $200. Not really. It wasn't that much because the companion was free and so on and so forth. But it was a bit much to ask people to have 6 sets, 6 books for all the clans. So to answer your question, those decisions ended up going to the top in a sense, because really at that point, Justin was kind of the top of the heap. So in a sense, those questions kind of went to the top. And now those questions have been answered, and there's no like really similar questions left to be answered like that in the game. Like we know all the clans that are going to exist officially, basically, and so on. And so we know all that. Yeah, I'd say the La Sombra are definitely a lot better supported in V5 than the Zemese. I would say, mostly because they get a full clan write-up that is like core book length and then some, and of course the Hakata as well, and Cult of the Blood Gods, that the Zemese do not get. The Zemese only get the kind of like shortened splat in the player's guide, and in the companion, it's, it also very truncated. So yeah, the Zemese are not as well represented, I say, in V5 in general, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That gives me opportunity as well. I'm a huge fan of the clan, and there's a lot there to mine, which is great. So as far as what I wanted to do with this section is Fleshcraft. It's a level 3 Protean power with Dominate 2 as the amalgam. And it is basically the whole shebang. Like with Fleshcraft, this, high, it's, pretty, you're giving up a lot. Protean 3 is kind of a great level. So if you want to dedicate yourself to be the Fleshcrafter, to be like the, guy who makes the monsters and all that, then I really think just having a solid amalgam power that lets you do that works. I don't think you should have to buy 2-3 powers, all of them amalgams, building up to it. I feel that's kind of a waste, and you're asking a lot from people for not a lot of reward. And basically, this is a very simplified version of what you'll find in the companion. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Basically, you can completely change your appearance, redistribute attributes, shape weapons out of your flesh. You can use the power on others, but they have to be willing or restrained. There's a system there for how they can resist you, all that, and how you can kind of like heal the changes over time, and basically how mortals who are shaped by this power would basically require extensive like surgery to fix, if if someone doesn't reverse it with vicissitude. Um, and yeah, there it is. The duration is permanent. And it's a rouse check, and so on and so forth. So you can use it baseline as it is, or as I'll get into later, you can use the like plots project system for basically longer term flesh crafting projects, whether that's making like war ghouls or whatnot. Whispers of the Flesh, as I said, is in the main book, so on. So I won't go over that again. Then Horde Form, a signature MSA power. I did not want it to be part of like a nesting doll. I felt like, Protean, there's so much stuff to grab in Protean that's, good and useful. Like, I didn't want to lock someone out of Horde Form just because maybe they wanted like wolf claws, but like wanted to flavor the wolf claws in a kind of Zemisei way, which I think is a fine way to do it. Like, maybe you don't want Flens for whatever reason. You don't want to go into, dominate at that point. Maybe you just want the claws, and that's that. I think that's perfectly valid and fine. And just say like that you're fashioning a weapon out of your hand, that kind of thing. Well, I'm glad that your players found some use for Whispers of the Flesh. And yeah, Thin Blood, of course, would get pretty badly wrecked by Whispers of the Flesh. I like Whispers of the Flesh thematically. I know system-wise, it's maybe not as powerful as it could be, and it's definitely not as powerful hand-to-hand as like Flen's Wolf Claws or whatever it's called now, Bestial Weapons or whatever. But I think for like a ranged thematic attack where you like rip skin and muscle off people, it's pretty fun and cool. And yeah, and mortals and Thin Bloods, I guess, would get wrecked by it pretty bad. The Horde Form, I feel, is kind of a signature power for Zemisei in general, so I didn't want it to be too hard to get. Yeah, Whispers of Flesh, it trades off damage, because obviously Flens and all those other ones, they last the whole scene. Whispers is, a one-shot wonder. It trades off basically damage for range. So yeah, being able to like hit somebody with a direct damage dice pool power from range, especially if you can get like the blood potency boosts and all that. Like if you have a high blood potency and get extra dice and all that, it could be pretty nasty. If you maximize the die pool, I guess it could be pretty gross. I've actually never had a player really lean into Whispers, to be honest. So yeah. Oh yeah, and resonance too. Actually, that's a good point. Especially if you're using like the modified resonance rules from The Night Belongs to Us or something. It could be pretty good, because I think it's a little harder to get the bonus for Protean, if I remember correctly, by the baseline rules. But I think you get +1 or 2. I think it's +1 die if the resonance is correct. But for Horde Form, I want it to be a signature Zemisei power. It always has been. It's really the kind of power that people think of when they want to play a Zemisei. Usually, they're like, okay, that's kind of the it's when my nerd becomes a monster. It kind of like is the Jekyll and Hyde part of Zemisei. So I didn't want it to be totally blocked behind a wall of prerequisites, but I definitely obviously wanted it to be amalgam. So the fact that it's a level 4 Protean power with Dominate 2, I feel that paywalls it pretty well away from the other clans that get Protean, asking them to dump 2 points and Dominate out of clan on top of using their level 4 Protean power. Sorry, my cats are running around like crazy for some reason. Um, so this, yet again, I wanted a pretty simplified system. I didn't want to make Horde Farm hard to think of. It's a one rouse check. Um, it lasts for the scene. You gain a number of extra attribute dots equal to your Protean rating and the Feral Weapons power. Boom. And that's just the Protean Feral Weapons power. So you cannot set any attribute above 5 with this power. At the story's discretion, you can also make use of tentacles to climb or grapple multiple victims or wings to glide from heights. While in this form, all of your criticals are messy criticals and your frenzy tests are +2 difficulty. Also, you can only communicate with low moans, hungry grunts, sibilant hisses, and monstrous screams. So it's not really a power to hang out in and like chill. It is very much a kind of like, shit is going down. Let's break some shit kind of power. And I didn't really want to specify where the attribute dots can go because I really feel that's up to the player. But basically 4 extra attribute dots is the baseline. It can go up to 5 because you can get Protean 5, obviously. Should be plenty. To be a pretty, nasty monster. I felt that, that was worth it for one rouse check. And that was that. It's not a complicated power. It doesn't really compare to Krynos form as it used to back in the day. But I still think it's, pretty useful. Especially for a single rouse check, and it lasts the scene, and getting feral weapons on top of whatever else. You can churn. I think the main concept was the idea of being able to churn a physically weak character into someone particularly powerful, and a character who's already physically powerful who uses power could like boost other stats, whether that's their perception, grow eyeballs all over them or whatever. And of course, all the little movement things that come with the power. So it was more about kind of nailing the thematic elements of it as opposed to making something like overpowered. And I really didn't want to make something that matched Krynos form from Werewolf, as I felt that was kind of a bit above and beyond where V5 is right now. And then finally is Blood Shape, the kind of, not really a classic Xemasi power, but the idea of churning into a pool of blood and what that could mean. Being able to like drown victims with your body, mortals specifically, and just kind of sneak around. In a sense, it is more similar to kind of the Shadow form power, where you basically are a pool of blood that can like slink around and crawl up walls and sneak under doors or go down drains and all that stuff. And I won't read the whole power, but yeah, the vampire cannot be identified because you're basically just a shapeless blob of blood. You can't be grappled. You can squeeze under door, climb up sheer surfaces. You can't cling to ceilings, and you can't separate into multiple pools. Excuse me. And you're pretty clearly a supernaturally animated mass of blood. I guess you might be able to make a roll to like be really still, so people just think you're a big pool of blood. I think that would be fair. But otherwise, people are going to know that you're a moving, slinking, slithering pool of blood. You can't make use of disciplines, skills, or equipments requiring physical contact. You can feed from freshly spilled blood or on restrained, willing, or unconscious animals or mortals. You subtract your protean level from all superficial damage. Does not stack with fortitude, blah, blah, blah. And in this form, you can simultaneously drown and feed on weak mortals. You can slake 1 hunger, inflict 1 aggravated damage per round, killing the mortal at the end of round 3 by forcing yourselves down their throat. So yet another power to murder weak mortals with impunity. I just like that. I don't know. I think weak mortals, you basically should be easy to be dealt with by vampires, even if you're just a blob of blood. Um, all right. So I talked about the plots before. It's kind of, as I said, an innovation on the project system, simplification of them. Um, so you can basically make projects that can be accomplished a little faster than usual projects. Not necessarily, though, but basically the idea is for the project system to be simplified so that there's just less bookkeeping more than anything else. That was the main concept. And so for plots, basically in this case, these are flesh crafting plots. So if you meet the prerequisite for the plot, which is usually a specific vicissitude power, you can then try to accomplish this plot. So here we have the perfect spy. You need the fleshcraft power as a prerequisite. And then it basically tells you what is needed, what kind of role is required, and how it can be accomplished. So this is a plot to shape a pawn to perfectly impersonate a mortal or another vampire. So you can basically shape someone so they look exactly like someone else. Kind of a classic flesh crafting plot or scenario that has been used in many vampire stories and novels and all that. And here's a nice simple way to do it. There's some things in here that I could kind of go over, like what is scope, stakes, milestones, and all that. I'll just read the plot section so you get a basic idea of it. So vampires of vicissitude can lead plots making use of their ability to reshape bodies. These plots can impersonate others, shape ghouls into powerful guardians, or even create flesh leviathans capable of smashing cars and leveling buildings. So plots use a simplified version of the project system. It's in the V5 core book. The lead must meet the plot's prerequisites and make a launch roll with a difficulty equal to its scope, and the coterie and the pack and their allies stake background dots equal to the scope. Mawas who contribute to a plot's stake may subtly change the plot's course, or plot's outcome. On a critical win on the launch roll, the plot immediately advances by 2 milestones without complications. A failed launch roll means the stake dots are tied up, but the plot makes no progress for 1 increment, when the launch roll can be attempted again. A bestial failure has the same result as a failure, but the plot's goal has been exposed to one of the pack's adversaries or enemies. Blood surges and willpower cannot modify launch rolls. So anyone in the pack or allied to them can put up stake dots if invited to do so, but if they use background dots not from the listed stakes, their contribution is halved. Stake backgrounds cannot be used for other projects or plots until the plot is completed or abandoned. And these backgrounds will often be unavailable for use night to night as the plot calls upon them. The plot advances 1 milestone each increment and can spawn a complication. Each plot gives examples of these, but the SD can invent their own. The storyteller rolls the plot's scope with a difficulty equal to the margin of success on the launch roll before checking off a milestone. Each increment, the pack must resolve complications or abandon the plot. Each plot has a milestone clock separated into segments equal to the plot's milestones that are marked off every increment until the plot is resolved when the clock is filled. A plot can be abandoned at any time, releasing the staked background dots immediately and losing any accrued milestones. So, in this case, the Perfect Spy has a scope of 3 or the higher of a target's mask or status. So if you're trying to impersonate someone who has a lot of mask or status, it's harder to do so. So someone with like status 4, the scope becomes 4. Someone with a mask of, I don't think they really can get a mask higher than 2, to be honest, but it is what it is. The stakes that are fully, so the scope is 3, so that means that you have to stake up 3 background dots. And in this case, the stakes that are relevant are contacts, influence, and retainers. So if you can use other background dots, but if you do, they only count for half. So if you say used resources, you threw money at the problem, you would have to throw in 2 resources to get 1 scope filled up. It has 4 milestones, which is why the circle is cut up into 4 pieces. And each increment is a week. So each milestone, and milestones is when complications can happen. The ST basically makes a roll to see if a complication arises, and that kind of stalls the plot or project until it's resolved. So that kind of puts it on pause. In this case, the increment is a week. So usually this plot takes 4 weeks to resolve if no complications arise, or you handle the complications as soon as they come up. If it takes you longer to handle the complication, then that is how long it's paused, and of course will make it last longer. So usually this plot takes about 4 weeks to resolve. If you get a critical success on the launch roll, that would actually, as I said, it fills up 2 increments. It checks off 2 slices on the pie. So that would reduce it to 2 weeks and only 2 further complications. So the system here, it gives you the launch roll, lean or grass plus protean plus mask, or status if impersonating a vampire. And then the system, if this plot is successful, the targeted pawn looks and sounds like the person they are impersonating. They also have been trained to mimic their mannerisms, have studied their life story, relationships. The pawn has subterfuge die pool that it can use to maintain the ruse, equal to 5 plus the margin of success on the plot's launch roll. Plots are really cool here. I like them here in Crowned in Shadow. Have you thought about putting a generic write-up of plots as a replacement for projects? Maybe in The Night Belongs to Us. Maybe. I haven't really thought about that as a generic replacement for projects. I like the project system. I didn't want to fully replace the project system because if a team or a group of players is comfortable using projects and understands the system, then I don't want to necessarily replace or F with that. I feel projects in general are just a little more complicated than what I want at my table. I felt like plots kind of squared that circle in a fun, interesting way. I don't know if I'd want to generify it too much. In Crowned in Shadow, the Abyss mysticism plots work well. I don't really know what other uses I will say in the Ivory Tower book, I'm working on something that does use the plot system. That revolves around basically what I'm calling like conspiracies, which are kind of like a step above projects. It's basically like multiple plots put together. That I'm still working on. So in a sense, that will exist in the Ivory Tower playing the Camarilla. But we'll see. That is still being worked on, and that would be something supplemental in a sense to the book. It wouldn't necessarily be integral, maybe. There's some stuff that I am playing around with that hopefully will get fleshed out appropriately. Yeah. I don't think I'm gonna mess with The Night Belongs to Us. It's very self-contained, and I think it has everything I wanted to put in that book. So I don't think that's something I'm going to add anything to. I'm pretty sure once I add the Ravnos stuff to the back of the Black Handbook, that book is basically going to be complete. I don't think we're going to do anything with the Salubri, simply because I don't think there's a lot we could add to the Salubri unless we made some major changes to the Salubri, and I'm not quite sure I'm ready to do that. And then finally, to round up the fleshcrafting plots, is the complications. It just gives some examples of what kind of complications you could get. So there could be increased security around the target. The target could be wounded or scarred, so now they look different. The pawn that you've been fleshcrafting and training has been kidnapped or bribed to kind of back out of the project. Or rumors about your plot are leaking out. People are, know that you're up to something having to do, with maybe your target or whatever, and then you have to handle those complications in game so the plot can continue. I won't go over the others in that much detail, but basically, there's one for making war ghouls. There's one for making Vozd, and I just use the stats for war ghouls and Vozd from the companion with a little bit of extra detail. Um, uh, and basically how long they take. As you can see, the Vozd, each increment is a month, and it has 8 milestones. So this is an 8-month plot to make a Vozd, and the requirements are not just fleshcraft, but also you have to have blood sorcery too. And the scope requires a very heavy investment in backgrounds. It requires 7 background dots, and only dots in Haven, Herd, and Retainers give you full price. Every other kind of background, the value is halved. And then there's the launch roll, Chase or Clout, plus Protean and Herd. Salubri stuff, they'll buy it? Okay, well, maybe that will do it. I do have a cover for a Salubri focused book, so maybe. I was planning on using it for something else, but who knows? Or maybe I could wrap a little thing about Salubri into the Salubri-focused adventure. I think that if I was going to do it, that's what I would do. I have a Salubri-focused adventure that, I don't know. At this point, it's kind of like on the shelf. But if that gets produced, maybe I would add like a little alternate Salubri clan write-up with that. Of course, VODs are really nasty, so I think that's a pretty good investment for what they are. War Ghouls, they're a little easier to make, and commensurately are not anywhere near as possible as a Vozd. Then, kind of the last 2 things are basically the creation of Blood Brothers, which we call Cull the Duskborn. Which is basically you get a bunch of Thin Bloods together, and you reshape them into a Blood Brother. So this is from the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. It's kind of a new enemy and a reimagining of Blood Brothers as basically these like vampire doppelgangers that devour and impersonate their victims, and then kind of seek out new victims after that. So they're less about like a group of people that can borrow their body parts and all that, and they're more. It's more like The Thing, is kind of what we're imagining here. So it's like if you've ever seen the movie The Thing by John Carpenter, that is kind of how we're imagining Blood Brothers here. And they're made out of a mass of Thin Bloods, and then kind of unleashed. And as you can see, they are not super smart or super social. They're physically pretty dangerous. And they're able to kind of impersonate past victims just well enough to get close to someone, not really well enough to, play a role or fool anybody. Okay, and then lastly is Praise the, yet again, that requires fleshcraft and even more blood sorcery than the Vozd. And then lastly is Praise the New Flesh, which requires that you have fleshcraft, and you have path convictions. You can't be, you have to be on a path, basically. And for this, you reform yourself into something strange, beautiful, and perfect. So this is the classic idea of a Zemese who has basically reshaped their body to more perfectly align with like their soul, in a sense. So it kind of creates this kind of like almost like mystical perfection and alignment between their inner self and their outer self. So that how strange, beautiful, ugly, or monstrous you look obviously is different based on each Zemese. This is, of course, narratively very closely linked with like Sasha Vikos and the concept of the alien beauty of the Zemisei. And I wanted a way for players to play around with that. So this is definitely a project or plot that only a very powerful vampire would be able to do themselves, like someone at a Sasha Vikos level, let's say. But a younger vampire, Zemisei, would be able to do it as well with the willing help of their allies. If they were willing to basically, give them space, a haven, or, herd, blood, to basically perform this. Each increment here is 3 months with 6 milestones. So the base amount of time this takes is 18 months. So it's a year and a half to perfect this. So it will take some time to make it happen. There are various complications, but the basic outside output of it systemically is you can define your new form as you wish in consultation with your storyteller and your pack. And as long as this new form is maintained, you automatically fail any attempt to pass as mortal, and your blood potency is increased by amount equal to your number of path convictions. You can never exceed your generation limit on blood potency. So you get this could be a pretty big bump to your blood potency, up to +3, as long as you're not running over your generation limit on blood potency. And the duration is permanent until you are impaired by willpower damage or you enter torpor. So you can kind of like lose your alignment in a sense if you're mentally impaired, and if you enter torpor, you kind of naturally revert to your form of death, as it were. I think it's a pretty cool plot. And if you, and it's definitely not a plot, yes, please remind your Zemisei pair. It's definitely not a plot every Zemisei will be interested in. Obviously, the benefit is pretty cool, but not all Zemisei are going to be interested in basically never being able to pass for human or mortal. Again, I mean, I guess, Obfuscate takes care of that problem on sun level. I mean, most people love blood potency bump. But the other part of it might not be of interest to them. It's a big investment. And you basically this is going to be the plot that probably the only plot you're really going to be able to pull off in a campaign. I doubt, like, if you go for this, I doubt you're going to have a lot of room for other plots, probably. So I think it hits a kind of right. It hits a narrative sweet spot that some Zemisei players are really going to be interested in, and others are not. It's not like a gimme, If you play a Zemisei, it's not like, oh, well, we got to do Praise the New Flesh right away. Like, game one, let's start on that. Not all Zemisei are going to be interested in it. So I felt it does a good mix between the two. And the Lasombra have a similar plot in Crown of the New Flesh, where they kind of connect themselves with the Abyss and all that, with a kind of different outcome, but a similar idea of they are investing in humanity and their otherworldliness, and I think yes, that's it. Then we just get into the character sheet that Mr. Gon so kindly made for us, and that's basically the end of the book. And that covers all the disciplines that are in the book currently. So I guess that's a good concrete place to end things. I can go about my other chores and errands, and hopefully come back later in the week. Thanks for joining me and chatting about disciplines and powers and Sabbat stuff. Oh, about Gehenna War? Yes. So I've spoken to Paradox, White Wolf, and people at Renegade, and we agreed on credits. And as far as I know, I believe we're already credited in the PDFs. I haven't checked. I don't know. And if there is ever a second printing of Gehenna War, we'll be credited there as well. Basically, the team of authors in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat will be credited by name, and the fact that the stuff used in Gehenna War was taken from the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. So that's good. That's good news. It's definitely not something I was gonna make a big stink about or whatever. These things happen. Our book, pretty clearly from just the sales and from what people have told me and how I'm approached about the book, it's pretty clearly become the kind of default player's guide for Sabbat in V5, and quite clearly, the writing team on Gehenna War, some people felt the same way and didn't realize it was a community content book, and that's perfectly, that's okay. These mistakes happen, but obviously, I want the credit to go where it's due. I think the Gehenna War book is a fine book, but quite clearly we didn't write what we wrote for the Gehenna War book. So if we're going to be referenced, or if our material is going to be used in official books, we're very happy for our material to be canon now. At least those pieces of material that were used. But obviously we want credit for ourselves, me for myself and for the writers involved, and we want credit for the book. So we're very happy that we'll be credited. It was, I think there was some miscommunication that kind of made it so it took a lot longer than anybody thought it would. But it is what it is, and the credit is there now. So I'm happy to hear that, or at least I should say the credit is agreed upon. I haven't looked to see if it's been implemented or anything like that. But my understanding is that it's in the PDF versions of Gehenna War, and that if there's a second printing of Gehenna War or the physical book, we will also be there. So that's good news, and I'm satisfied with that. That conclusion. I will say. Well, thank you very much. I hope we get more V5 Sabbat stuff that I'm involved in as well. I suspect it will be community content stuff. I don't see more Sabbat stuff in the future for V5 in print. Maybe, who knows? I would be surprised. But it's obviously something that resonates enough that it's in the video games. Like this, no spoilers, but the Bloodlines 2 game heavily involves Sabbat as the core plot element of the entire game. So make of that what you will. It's quite clearly something in the game that resonates with a lot of people. All right, well, that's it for me. Thanks so much for coming and chatting with me, and I will see you all next time. Praise Cain.